draws some points from it that are perhaps a little speculative in some places, but the message, I think, is clear. Is where we'll begin. And I'll be reading all passages this morning from the NET version because I like the way that it reads, and it helps me. It flows very naturally with the way that I like to speak, and so I do enjoy it for that reason. But Numbers chapter 13, the context that we're coming into here is the Israelites have been wandering. Well, they've been leaving Egypt. They have not yet wandered the 40 years because this is the incident that results in that wandering, as we know. The Israelites have left. They have come to the threshold of the promised land. And God says to Moses, and Moses tells the people that they're going to send spies. One from every tribe will be represented, and these spies will go and deliver a report about what kind of land they're about to take possession of. Because as is the case with humans and land, very rarely do you find unoccupied country when you go anywhere. And that is the case here. Our reading begins in verse 25. The spies return. They returned from investigating the land after 40 days. They came back to Moses and Aaron and to the whole community of the Israelites in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They reported to the whole community and showed the fruit of the land. They told Moses, "We went into the land where you sent us. It is indeed flowing with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. But the inhabitants are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the land of Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country. And the Canaanites live by the sea along the banks of the Jordan." Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses, saying, "Let us go up and occupy it, for we are well able to conquer it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against these people, because they are stronger than we are." Then they presented the Israelites with a discouraging report of the land they had investigated, saying, "The land that we passed through to investigate is a land that devours its inhabitants. All the people we saw there are of great stature. We even saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak came from the Nephilim. And we seemed like grasshoppers both to ourselves and to them." Continuing in chapter 14. Then all the community raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the Israelites murmured against Moses and Aaron. And the whole congregation said to them, "If only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had perished in this wilderness. Why has the Lord brought us into this land only to be killed by the sword, that our wives and our children should become plunder? Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt?" So they said to one another, "Let's appoint a leader and return to Egypt." Then Moses and Aaron fell down with their faces to the ground before the whole assembly community of the Israelites. So we're going to pause here for just a moment. The mission to spy out the land results in this report being given back to them. And we find Caleb speaks up, and we won't focus on this, but Caleb is a specimen of a man. Caleb, you'll find in his future life, he does some pretty impressive things. And he is optimistic, but the report is discouraging. The report is focusing on the negatives and focusing on the physical limitations and fears that the Israelites are experiencing. And are these real fears? Are these legitimate fears? It seems so to them. From a physical perspective, yes, this is something to be feared, and the odds do seem to be stacked against them, but the people seem to be nearly unanimous in their fear of this land. They seem to be united in their rebellion against Moses and against God. So much so that they were willing to go back to Egypt. And this isn't a generation later. These are the same Israelites who left slavery in Egypt, and yet they're willing to return. Let's pick up the reading again in Numbers chapter 14, verse 6. "And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, two of those who had investigated the land, tore their garments. They said to the whole community of the Israelites, 'The land we passed through to investigate is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their protection has turned aside from them, but the Lord is with us. Do not fear them." However, the whole community threatened to stone them. But the glory of the Lord appeared to all the Israelites in the tent of meeting. We'll pause the reading again there. So the story continues from this point on. Moses and God speak together. God addresses Moses, and he's ready again. This isn't the first time God has said this to Moses. He's ready to destroy this nation of people. And he says to Moses, "I'm going to start over with you. I'll use you and build a new nation out of your descendants, not these people." And Moses intercedes for Israel again, as he has before, and God relents. And we'll look at some portions of the end of this story when we get there. But I wanted to take a moment to pause and look at maybe how we've approached this before. Joshua is a character in the Old Testament who gets a lot of airtime. Joshua is kind of one of those main characters. There's a lot said about him. And especially when we think about Joshua, we think of his strong stances. Joshua is someone who takes a stand. He plants his feet in the ground and he says, "This is where I stand. This is what I believe." In Joshua chapter 24, in that book, at the end of Joshua's life, this is years later once he has become the leader of Israel after Moses dies. He becomes the military leader who leads the campaign throughout all of Israel. And when Joshua is old, he addresses the nation, he addresses Israel and says, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. You choose what gods you're going to serve, but we are going to serve the Lord." And we treasure those words. We treasure those verses as a testament to Joshua's resolve and Joshua's faith. But consider something, that in this instance in Numbers chapter 14, Joshua is not alone. Joshua and Caleb are standing up before the people. And if I was to title this lesson, it would be "The Power of Two." And this is where some of the speculation comes in, but we don't know how this story may have played out if it was just Joshua alone or just Caleb alone. How impactful was it to have another, to have a companion? Because to be the only one is a struggle. Have you ever had to stand alone? Have you ever had to make a stand by yourself? To go against whatever the expectation is and to say, "No, I'm not going to do that." And you all alone in that effort, have you ever had to do that? I've got a story for you from my childhood. I haven't told many people this story. When I was a teenager, I went to the local community college and I was taking classes there. And I enrolled in this writing class, and the professor assigned a book to read for the writing class. And as I was looking through the book, I realized there were some pretty adult content in this book. There were some pretty explicit sexual descriptions and things in this book. And at the time and at the age that I was, I hadn't really read books like that, and I was kind of like, "Ooh, this I feel uncomfortable reading this." And so it was a great internal struggle to me. And so later after class, I went to the professor and I said, "Look, I just don't feel conscientiously like I can read this book in this class." And by the way, I was about 15 at the time. I don't think the professor knew that I was that young. And she kind of asked me some questions about it, and she kind of had a disappointed look on her face, and she said, "Well, that's the assigned reading. There's no alternative assignment you can do. I'm not going to make an exception for you." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll be withdrawing from your class then." And I did. And, at the time I was a kid and I thought this was the end of the world. I'd never withdrawn from a class. I didn't know at the time. I later learned that college professors are used to people dropping their classes all the time. It's not an unusual thing at all. She probably never thought twice about it after that day. I, however, as a kid, felt very distressed because I felt like I needed to defy the expectations of the adult that I was placed under. And so it was very difficult for me at the time. Now, was I being dramatic? Looking back, yeah. I'd probably today, given what I know today, I would probably have read the book and done the assignment with the critical eye that I have now. But as a kid, it bothered me, and I decided to try to take that stand. And I don't want to give the impression at all that I consider this some kind of grand gesture. I wasn't the victim of religious discrimination, okay? I wasn't being mistreated. This was my own conscience acting. The point is that it was a very distressing feeling at the time. It was very hard to feel like I was the only person in the class, and I didn't even do it in front of other people. I just did it one-on-one with the professor, and it was still hard. Have you ever found yourself in a position of standing alone? Have you ever found yourself working alone? Felt like you were the only one who was really trying. You were the only one who was putting in the effort. Or maybe you felt invisible altogether. I'm doing all this work and no one seems to notice. No one seems to pay attention. Would anyone even say anything if I just stopped doing this work, and would it make a difference? It's a discouraging place to find oneself in, working alone. Elijah found himself in this position. In 1 Kings chapter 18 and chapter 19, we see the accounts of Elijah feeling so discouraged because he believes himself to be the only one standing up for God in the whole nation. He's so discouraged that he flees and he hides in a cave. He refuses to eat. He's distraught. He's harming himself in his depressive state because he can't get over this pain of feeling alone. And God has to remind him there are thousands who haven't bowed the knee to Baal. And Elijah was just he didn't know that yet, or he had forgotten. He needed that reminding. How about Hagar in Genesis chapter 21, who she's cast out of her household? She's the maidservant of Sarah, and after there's a dispute between her and Sarah, she and Ishmael, they're cast out. She's in the wilderness by herself. Ishmael faints in the wilderness. He's dying of thirst. And Hagar thinks, I'm all alone. My family has rejected me. My household has rejected me. My son is dying, and where is the Lord? And the Lord speaks to Hagar, and the Lord saves her. But she felt like she was the only one. When you're the only one, it's easier to be defeated. The people were ready to stone these men, Caleb and Joshua, ready to stone them. And I will say, it's harder to stone two people than it is to stone one. And I don't just mean the physical exertion. I mean you have to be really committed to stamp out more than one voice. Consider, too, what we learned in our class. We've been talking recently in the resurrection class about how Jesus faced his trial. The Jewish leaders, and they perpetrated this false trial, and they convicted him and had him executed for these false crimes. And Jesus was put to death. And we talked about in this class how not mere months later, Peter and other of the apostles were before this same council. These same Jewish leaders were trying them. Why didn't Peter get put to death in that moment? Why didn't the other apostles immediately suffer the same penalty? I think there could be a variety of reasons, but one is that it is harder to silence two or more than it is to silence one. No one stood beside our Lord when he was tried. He stood alone. And he was the Lord, but because he was alone, because nobody was with him, he could be defeated in the eyes of the people. It's harder to stop two than it is to stop one. God knows that we are vulnerable when we are alone. God knows that it pains us to be alone. He designed us that way. He designed us so that if we are alone, that is not right. That is not our condition that we're designed for. Hence his words, it is not good for man to be alone. So what are we to do? I think the first piece of advice we can draw from this is to seek out a helper. How much things change when there is a companion, when there is someone making a stand with you. How much more strengthening is that? I would say, is it twice as easy? Is it 3 times as easy? I mean, it's an order of magnitude difference when you have at least one other person with you. And we see that in the reading. In Numbers 13:30, Caleb is the first person named who speaks up. Does that mean Caleb was the originator of this protest against the people? I don't know. I don't know if Caleb was originally the first one and then Joshua joined forces with him. Knowing what we know about the character of Joshua, maybe they both were on the same page from the start. But Caleb speaks up first, apparently. But then in Numbers 14:6, we find Joshua and Caleb. They are the ones who are making this protest, and they are mourning together about the people's rebellion. And it must have made a tremendous difference. Would this story in the book of Numbers, would it have even happened if they didn't have each other? Maybe. We don't know. Like I said, this is somewhat speculative. But how often are God's servants truly alone? How often do we find God using his servants and we find that they are truly and really alone? I think the deeper you will look, you will find that it is very, very few. Very, very rare. And of course, we're just speaking from a human perspective. None of us are truly alone when we are with God. Why ought we to seek out a helper? Why is that necessary? Well, the reading in Ecclesiastes 4 lays it out very well and very plainly. Solomon, in his logical and wise way, uses such approachable language and such approachable terms to help us see what is the benefit of a companion. What is the benefit of a helper? In verse 9 of Ecclesiastes 4, 2 people are better than one, because they can reap more benefit from their labor. For if they fall, one will help his companion up, but pity the person who falls down and has no one to help him up. Furthermore, if 2 lie down together, they can keep each other warm, but how can one person keep warm by himself? Although an assailant may overpower one person, 2 can withstand him. Moreover, a 3-stranded cord is not quickly broken. Here in Ecclesiastes, I think there are some lessons we can draw from this, some general truths that we find in Solomon's wisdom. One is that it is harder to be defeated when you have a companion. Your strength is multiplied. Your resilience is multiplied. Your ability to see the threats that one person may miss, but 2 people can be more vigilant. Secondly, you can reassure and encourage one another. You can give strength and warmth and rejuvenation to one another when you have someone to fall back on. When there's a lull in the fighting or when the day is over, you have someone that you can debrief with and make plans with. And if you choose your companions well, this is especially valuable, I think, you can have someone who will keep you grounded and will warn you if you are losing your way. The benefit of companions is that true north compass that resets us back on the path. Having someone else who tells us, hey, you're taking this in the wrong direction, or I think you're going down a road that I don't like seeing you go down. Let's work together at staying to the true course. And so much of this is borne out, too, in the beauty of God's design for marriage, God's intention in there being partnerships in life, so that we can do this with our spouse. We are harder to be defeated when we are 2 united rather than just 1. We can reassure and encourage one another. And if we have chosen well our spouse, we have someone who keeps us grounded and will warn us when we are going off track. Such a valuable thing. But it's not just in marriage, it's in the church as well. God designs all of our relationships to benefit from a plurality. And one warning I will say here, if we are hesitant to seek out help, if we're someone who says, no, I need to stand alone, I need to face this alone, I need to work alone, a word of caution. Do not find yourself romanticizing the idea of taking a stand alone. I think when we do that, it's very easy to get swept up in these grand imaginings that I'm going to plant my flag, I'm going to stomp my foot, and I'm going to be the hero who faces down everybody else. Everybody else is against me, but I'm going to make a stand. And we can picture ourselves taking a firm and righteous stand. And what does it do? It's inflating our view of ourselves. We're turning a stand for righteousness into a chance to inflate our pride, inflate our ego, to glorify ourselves. We're not the one we ought to be glorifying. Looking back at the story I told, could I have turned myself into a martyr because of this? Maybe, possibly. I don't know how much wherewithal I would have had to do that as a 15-year-old, but could I have moaned and complained and made a big fuss about, oh, look, I had to be pushed out of this class. They were assigning this to a minor. They didn't even know it. They were going to force me to read it. I could have really made a stink about this. And you probably see stories in the media where people do things like this, right? Someone feels like they're being mistreated, and maybe they go to social media and start complaining, and maybe a news source finds it and picks it up, makes it a story, and pretty soon everybody's picking a side. Everybody's picking a side. And the person who maybe originated the whole conflict, the person who took a stand for righteousness, sometimes they go so far as to practically make a media career out of that, and they go on to be a spokesperson, and they elevate themselves from this event. The words come to mind of Paul when he says, why not rather be defrauded than take it to the authorities of the world? Why not rather just be defrauded and move on? Of course, I understand I'm taking those words out of context, but I think you see my meaning there. It's not good to stand alone. It's not good to try to elevate yourself by standing alone. And if you're not trying to elevate yourself and you still don't want to seek help, we're hurting ourselves when we do that. We're causing harm. The important thing to know is that you are not alone. None of us are alone. And we are not made any greater by the bold stances we take. Joshua and Caleb were not made any greater because they took a stand here against the people. By the way, the people didn't listen. They still had to go into wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. It didn't make Joshua and Caleb any grander or more glorious than they were before. They're just men. If we take a bold stance, it's not our own glory. We're enabled by Jesus. That's the end of it. We are enabled by Jesus to take the stands that we do. Whether we do it alone or whether we do it together, Jesus gets the glory. Well, what about if you're not the person taking the stand, but you're on the sidelines? What if you see someone taking a stand? What I would say here is that the advice to us is to seek out opportunities to be the companion. Whether Caleb or Joshua spoke first, I don't know. But if Caleb spoke out first, then Joshua saw an opportunity where he needed to be the companion, and he needed to step up to help Caleb. When you see someone who is standing for what is right, stand beside them. Join forces with their righteousness and do it together. This doesn't just work when we're talking about ideological stances, standing for an idea, but it's also taking a stand in working together. If you see someone working alone, seek them out. Look for the people who are working by themselves. Ask yourself this: do you expect someone to fill a role because they've always done it? Well, they've always handled that, so that's just their thing. Let me take a little sidestep here and talk about a point regarding this. This happens so much in our marriages, whether we mean it to or not. We get used to the things that the other person does, and we start to forget that maybe they're feeling like they're the only one doing this. Maybe they're feeling like they're the only one who cares about this part of the relationship that needs work from both. And I will say as a husband, and I will say to all the other husbands, we need to be very careful about this. With all of the things that our wives do that we start to get used to them doing. And I'm not just talking about the housework or things in that nature. I'm talking about who plans your social life, who plans the places where you go or the things that you do as a family. Are you letting that mental work rest solely on her? If you expect someone to do something just because they've always done it, see that as an opportunity to become the companion, to become the helper, and to come alongside. Find the people who are doing too much and help them. Ask yourself this: would the work of the church cease if a few select people stopped doing what they were doing? And the answer should be no. It shouldn't be the case that a church would fall apart if one or two or just three key people stopped doing their job, because that is a sign that people are doing too much, and too many people are letting them do too much because, well, they're willing to do it. That's a pain on a church. That's a shame on a church. An example of that just comes to mind, the church in Washington County, Indiana, where my Grandpa Snowball and Grandma were. For years and years, Grandpa was the only one who did a lot of the things that church needed. And There came a time near the end of his life, the number of men who were doing things had dwindled to a handful, then maybe 3, then maybe 2. I will admit to you that I believed that church was going to fall apart when my grandpa died. I didn't think it was going to survive him not doing the things he was doing. It turns out that wasn't the case. Things changed there. But could that happen here? I don't believe it has. I think we're very blessed by the body of working people that we have. But let's not let it trend in that direction where, people are doing too much and everyone else is just letting them. Why should we seek to be the helper? We asked ourselves, why should we seek out help? Why should we seek to be the one who helps? Well, I think, for one, it trains us to do good. Coming alongside someone who is doing a good work helps us to learn how to do that good work as well. This is especially true if maybe you're uncomfortable with something, or you haven't tried doing a kind of work before, or you haven't tried to take a stand or to share a message before. If you do that with someone who has, and they're familiar with it, that is so valuable. That is such a priceless thing to be able to gain from. So this weekend, my sisters are all in town, and particularly my brother-in-law, Yuri, is in town. And he is a construction wizard. And I texted my sisters, we were working on some stuff yesterday, and Yuri and Dad were putting in cabinets, and I said, it is priceless to have someone here who knows what they're doing. And we were able to do so much yesterday, and we plan to do more. Wow, as long as we have him, we're going to wring him out for all he's worth, because, man, this is helpful. It is priceless to have the help of someone who is familiar with what they're doing, and you can gain from that too. So don't pass that up. Why should we be the ones who help? Why should we seek out the people who need help? Well, because it's strengthening to the one who needs it. It's strengthening to the one who is feeling weak. Maybe they're at the breaking point. Maybe they're ready to quit, and you don't know. If they're alone, it's going to happen. They are going to get tired, and they're going to fall. Why should we be the helpers? Because it results in every piece of the body doing their part. Turn to Ephesians chapter 4, if you will. Ephesians chapter 4 is one of the places where this metaphor of the body is used to describe the church. And it's so fitting, and it's so wise on the part of God to use these symbols that we can relate to and that we fully understand the moment we read them. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 12, he's been talking about many of the roles that were given by the Lord. And he says that these roles in verse 12 are to equip the saints for the work of ministry, that is, to build up the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of the faith and to the knowledge of the Son of God, a mature person attaining to the measure of Christ's full stature. So that's one long sentence saying, essentially, what is the point of building up? I think some people stop at the beginning of verse 12, to equip the saints for the work of ministry. Okay, that's why we do all the things we do, so that we can be ministers, so that we can be preachers, so that we can tell the word to other people. No, this is all one big long sentence. Build up the work of ministry, to build into the body of Christ, to attain unity of the faith and the knowledge of the Son of God, becoming mature to the measure of Christ's stature. In summary, this is a whole lot bigger than just knowing how to answer a Bible class question or knowing how to tell someone that they need Jesus. It's a whole lot bigger than that. Continuing on, so that we are no longer, this isn't the end of the sentence really, because it says so that we are no longer children tossed back and forth, carried by waves, and carried about by every wind of teaching, by the trickery of people who craftily carry out their deceitful schemes. But practicing the truth in love, we will in all things grow up into Christ, who is the head. From him the whole body grows, fitted and held together through every supporting ligament. As each one does its part, the body grows in love. And that's what I want us to dwell on here with this point. That the body grows when every part of the body is engaged and doing its part. And the ligaments are supporting each other. If you have muscles in your leg and you have bones in your leg, but you don't have ligaments, you're not going anywhere. Ask Dad. We need every part to be doing its share. The body of Christ is too great a blessing for us to go through life feeling like we're alone. Think about this. The body of Christ is too valuable for us to be going through life feeling like we're alone, because God has given us this. I will never be alone with this church family. If I lose all of my earthly family, I will never be alone with what God has given me. And conversely, the body of Christ is too great a blessing for us to allow our brothers and sisters to go on feeling like they are alone. It is too great a blessing to allow that to be the case. So be like Joshua and Caleb. Come to one another's defense. Rise to one another's aid and come to one another's help. Find the people who are alone. Find the people who are working alone, who are doing too much, or who you've just gotten used to them doing their part because they've done it so well for so long that you don't even see it anymore. Don't let that be the case. And if you're alone, if you find yourself feeling like you're the only one taking a stand, you're the only one trying, then find someone else and say, come with me. I need your help. I need a partner. I need someone to work with me on this because I can't do it alone. That takes humility. That takes a willingness to say, yeah, I'm not strong enough to do it all by myself. And that's hard for some of us to do, but we need to do it. There's a saying that goes, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the second best time to plant a tree is today. So if you are faced with regrets of what you haven't done in the past, the second best time is today. I hope this has helped you. I hope Joshua and Caleb can be an inspiration to you that the power of two is so much greater than the power of one. God did not design us to work as one. He didn't design us to work as a body of unconnected individuals, but as units of teams, pairs, companions, 2, 3, 4. We talked about 2. What happens when 2 becomes 3? What happens when 3 becomes 10 doing a work? What happens when 10 becomes 1,000? The early church knew a thing or two about this growth when people work together. If the church here can assist you or guide you in any way, if you need to make your life right with Christ, if you need to obey Christ for the first time, or you just want us to pray with you or pray for you, we'd love to do that. We can do that right now while we have an opportunity. We can do that at a later time when you feel more comfortable. If you need to talk to people first, if you want to grab anyone here will treat you with love and care. If we can help you in any way, let us do so while we stand and while we sing.
has truly been good to be together. We have a bigger family this morning with the extended Walker family being here with us, and always thankful, and it's always nice to see them and the ways they continue to grow, and not only with children growing, but just all the ways that beautiful family has grown during the